Jason's poetry emerges off the page, always at the edge of exuberance, curiosity, and sublimity. He is the author of 4 books of poems: Hold Me Tight, Primary Source, Striking Surface, and Sublimation Point. He edited the anthology Queer, a reader for writers. His poetry and essays have appeared in numerous journals and anthologies, among them Best American, Poetry London, Grand Street, Tin House, Quarterly, the Penguin Book of the Sonnet. He has received fellowships and residencies everywhere, the recipient of the Emily Dickinson Award from the Poetry Society of America. He is the poetry editor of Bellevue Literary Review, associate editor of Painted Bright Quarterly, and is a much beloved faculty member at the Borough Manhattan Community College, where he is an associate professor of English. Reading his new book, I came to realize how adventurous his poems read on the page, as script, as parables, as spells that highlight the body, art, history, sung to a pitch that I cannot help but hear as a kind of rapture, infectious because of its music, sure, but also because Jason imagines a life that bridges doubt, knowingness, and imagination with such elegance as to open up the possibilities of poetry as a secular space of invention. I cannot think of too many people who you would want to hear right now, this night, this evening. He's an electric person with electric lines, a la Whitman. So let's get some of that voltage here and now. Everyone, please welcome Jason Schneiderman.
Thank you, Major. That was so beautiful. And Major, Major's been my older brother for a really long time. He's been the older brother that you need in poetry, who helps you know the right thing to do, who you can call when you're not sure, that keeps you on the straight and narrow, and is also like the coolest person in the room that you just want to be exactly like. Thank you. Anger. When I was angry, I kept asking how anger works. No one understood my question. Friends thought I was joking or being obtuse. Friends would say, "What do you mean? How anger works? Anger is anger. What are you asking?" And I would say, well, is anger a finite material? Is anger like hydrogen, and there's simply a certain amount of it in the universe? Is there a zero sum of anger? A law of the conservation of anger? And can we pass it back and forth? Can you take my anger and leave me less? Can I take your anger and then have more? Is anger a renewable resource, like trees or coral reef, subject to natural rhythms and mass die-offs, forest fires, and warming tides, cycles of growth and depletion? Is anger something you deplete like money, that you save or spend and is gone as it goes, or something replenished like ejaculate, more on the way as soon as you send some off? Or is anger like ova, each egg coming on its own schedule until they run out? Is anger like pus, a response to a wound that you can drain or that you can heal? Or is anger like a gas you can vent because it is compressible but combustible? Or is anger like water that will explode the water balloon unless you tie it off at the right time? I thought someone had to know the answer because I was consumed by anger. It was under everything I did. I felt it all the time, and it never departed. I didn't have a breakdown, though I asked friends if what I was experiencing was a breakdown. No, they said, the breakdown looks only like a breakdown. And I looked okay, but no one knew how to help me. And I told a friend that I wasn't okay, and she told me that I was okay. But the anger was there all the time. Like a pair of shoes, they were always between me and the ground I walked on. And I kept asking everyone how anger works. Can you drain it? Can you vent it? Can you stop it? Can you heal it? Can you trade it? Can you sell it? And no one knew what I was asking until finally someone asked me to describe what I was feeling. And she said, "You're not talking about anger. You're talking about rage." And I realized that I'd never experienced anger. I only know rage, which helped a lot, which explained why I could only think about striking out and then not strike out, which explained why I knew which plants in my garden could be made into poisons and how, which explained why my daydreams turned into elaborate fantasies about harming people until I did the things I imagined to myself. And listen, please listen, I knew it was bad and I wanted out, but I couldn't write my way out of it. And I couldn't think my way out of it. And I couldn't love my way out of it. And I couldn't read my way out of it. And I thought I would live with it forever, that I would contain it at whatever price I had to pay. And I'm telling you this, and I need you to listen, because I'm saying that I do understand what it's like to want everyone else to suffer as much as you are suffering. And I understand what it's like to want to die, both to contain the pain of rage and to spread the pain of rage. And when you read of this mass murder or that suicide bombing, no, these killers are not inhuman or monstrous, but rather that they are weak vessels for rage, that they are balloons that have burst with their rage, that they are pipe bombs made of flesh and bone. And peace is what I want more than anything else. But peace is so fragile, so easy to take, so easy to lose. And so they take it from you to feel less alone. And I'm out of it now because I thought I had done it to myself, but I didn't. I see that now. I'm closer to peace. I'm further from rage. I'm a bomb, no longer ticking. But I was a bomb. Hold me tight. I was a bomb. Hold me tight. That's the first long poem in the book. And then it's built around, thank you guys so much. And it's so great to see so many wonderful people here. Dee, I think it's just coincidence that we're pressmates with books at the exact same time from the same place. But oh my God, it's been such a wonderful journey to be on with you. And it's just so fantastic that we get to do things together. And I have so many friends here. Alana has been getting me through this crisis in a really bad way, in a really great way, because I've been in a really bad way. And Jen is one of my oldest poetry friends, and to have her here is amazing. And I actually, my high school speech partner is here. So the very first person who watched me win trophies for oral interpretation of poetry is with us tonight. So I'm feeling really loved. Thank you. The book is built, oh, here's the book. With, I don't know if you can see the cover, but it's Judith beheading Holofernes. So it's my Kathy Griffin cover because it's a Jewish lady cutting off the head of a tyrant. And it's built around, the book is built around 5 sequences. So I'll read a little bit from each of the sequences. That was the first one. The second one is about wolves, Peter and the Wolf Orchestra. After the conductor refuses to listen to their demands, the wolf members of the orchestra simply refuse to play during the season's first performance of Peter and the Wolf. The conductor pushes forward and audience members are unsure of how to show solidarity with the silent wolf players. The wolves are fired and reform as the first all-wolf orchestra and choose Peter and the Wolf as their first production, though for the first time, Peter is cast as the villain and the wolf as the hero. Many parents complain, as children who attend the performance are deeply ashamed of being Peters and often spend their days insisting that they want to be wolves. And some even try to run away from home to join the wolves. Very few of the children succeed in becoming wolves, though some of them do. Some people say you can tell a wolf who used to be a human child. Some people say you can't. And I'm particularly, so the second sequence is about Chris Burden, who many people know as the artist who had himself shot as a performance piece in the 1960s. and the piece was called Shot. And so he had a very long and sort of weird career where he did a lot of performance-y things. And I think this poem sort of explains it. And this is the first poem from the Chris Burden suite, Velvet Water, 1974. And this is a response to the piece that I saw at the New Museum that was this amazing retrospective of Chris Burden's work, the Chris Burden suite, 1, Velvet Water. Watching a man trying to breathe water is a lot like watching a man trying to drown himself. At first, you want to stop him, to take his head out of the bucket, to insist that it's a lovely idea, but no one can actually breathe water. And then you worry for him, and then you worry less for him, and then you wish he'd stop. At first, it's awful, like a horror movie where the things are really happening, and then it's tedious, since he won't drown, and he won't stop trying to drown, excuse me, breathe water. And the suffering is there for you to witness as art, or not. You can go. As he reminded you at the start of the reel, this is a recording. It's not happening. It's not even what happened. It's just a record. Just a way of thinking yourself back. And since Major mentioned it, I am going to read the poem Americana, which is built around the phrase, "You're all hat and no cattle." Americana. You're all hat and no cattle. You're all snake and no venom. You're all wood and no lead. You're all tar and no feather. You're all ranger and no power. You're all margin and no center. You're all show and no dog. You're all speedo and no dick. You're all barricade and no protest. You're all outbreak and no virus. You're all New York and no city. You're all box and no Cornell. You're all inch and no foot. You're all ruler and no measure. This is one of my favorite poems in the book, and it's a memorial for Fanny Imlay, who I was doing a lot of research on Frankenstein, and Mary Shelley has this half-sister, this older half-sister who was the daughter of Mary Wollstonecraft. And she was refused passage with Mary Shelley when Mary Shelley was not eloping, but running off with Percy, because they didn't believe in marriage. They refused to let Fanny come with them, and she ended up becoming a go-between between William Godwin and Mary Shelley and Percy, and she just sort of got caught in the middle of this. All these personalities were so big, and she anyway. The rest of it's in the poem. In Memoriam, Fanny Imlay, 1794 to 1816. When you ask yourself how people survived the 19th century, before soap and antibiotics, before anesthesia and electricity, remember that not all of them did. Remember Fanny Imlay in her hotel room, drafting her suicide note before drinking laudanum. Remember the innkeeper who found her corpse and tore her name from the bottom of the note so she could be buried in Christian ground. Remember Fanny Imlay's final words, offering the blessing of forgetting that such a creature ever existed as I, remainder torn away. And so the very last sequence in the book is about these kind of last things. And I'm just going to read the last poem in the book, and then I'll conclude my reading. And this is The Last Black Hole. The last black hole was not the last. The last black hole was everything in the entire universe, collapsed into a space even smaller than you can imagine. The last black hole was the end of time, and then it exploded into a new time, and then there was a whole new universe, the one we know. And what is coming at the next black hole will be another whole new universe, but not the one we know. The one coming will be a universe where nothing of us will have survived, not even the tiniest speck, except maybe the rediscovered truth that there was a time in which we lived. Though this truth will be our truth, not theirs. But you knew that, didn't you? That every truth we have is a human truth. That as long as we're the ones looking, everything will always look like us. And as sure as every human will be born and die, there is only our time, our journey to the black hole and our journey away from it. And don't be discouraged. We do not give birth astride the grave, as some have said, but rather we are born into a picture in which we are only a pixel. And as the pigment shall never know the painting, so we are fixed within our place, and we must not fear because we cannot see the design. And this I call faith, knowing that the last black hole is coming. And on the other side will be time and space. And on the other side will be time and space. And on the other side will be time and space, but without us. I'm going to unmute everyone again and stop
Jason,
the
that was great.
recording. Thank you.
Wow,
Please.
Jason, amazing.
For
Beautiful reading.
stunning readings.
That was stunning,
Absolutely
Jason.
stunning readings.
Thank you. And thank you so much for being here. It's so great to have. And check out Kathy Fiorito's Cabaret and Alana Friedman. They're doing wonderful things. So check out their work all over the internets. And just Thomas, thank you so much for being here. And yeah, this is
We
just
were actually
like,
wondering if we could add a quick Q&A. I know
Yeah, I
that's
thought,
KGB,
you know, but before we do that, I just want to, I asked John, I said, John, I know it's not a normal feature of KGB readings, but it'd be great right now to maybe field some questions. But before we do that, you know, I just want to acknowledge everybody that's in the room. It's not like there's 50 of us, but, you know, thank you, Meg, and the great poet Erica Meitner. Neighbor is here. So many of our neighbors.
Jennifer Knox, I think
Actually.
I saw.
Who else is here? Melinda, Kathy, Char, Lily, Krista Ely under a Sadie, Chelsea. Our neighbor Pam McPherson is here. Victoria Morgan.
Michelle Kotler.
Miss Allen, so good to see you after many years. Long ago at Bretlow, Fianni, Dolores, who else? Claire, Diana.
Don, who we'd just like to say the title of his book because it's fucking. We'd like to say that.
Michelle Randall, Elana, Gray, Peter. Who else am I missing? I said Fianna, Diana, Michelle, Melanie Conroy Goldman, also a Red Hen author. Did I miss it? Lily is here. So thank you all. Thank you all. Don Yordi is in the mix. We acknowledged him earlier. So thank you, everyone. So this is a community right now. And I thought maybe I conferred with John. I think we have a little time for some Q&A.
Yeah, we definitely would not normally be done by now. So
Truly.
yeah. Jason, let's talk about anger.
Okay. Wait, I have to
So
unmute people. Everyone's all muted. No one can ask any questions because I have everyone muted.
That's right.
I was like, why is no one asking a question? So now everyone, wait, it's not working.
You're like
It's
the
not
Wizard of
unmuting everyone.
Oz.
I'm hitting mute, unmute all, and it
You have no
says all
clue.
participants are unmuted, but you're gonna have to unmute yourself.
If you want to ask a question, just unmute yourself. You have
Yeah.
the full trust of Jason.
You're all muted, no comment.
The
So,
chat is also a
Alana
place
is saying that it's possible to ask in the chat.
That's
You can.
true. That's true.
I guess I have one. Kristen posing as Sadie. For both of you, I'm like a developing songwriter, not a poet, and I have difficulty writing unless I feel really angry or really happy or really something. And I'm wondering if what your process is like, or if you have similar issues or like how you discipline yourself to sit down and write and create something meaningful, even if it doesn't always feel like something that's easy to do.
PD. You want to start?
You're right here to me, so I'm just pointing to you. Do you have anything? I mean.
Well, I always tell this story, and it's a bad story because when I was in graduate school, I went to graduate school with a particular person, and she wrote every day. She lit a votive candle and wrote until the votive candle burned down, and those poems were like torture. It was like, she was punishing herself, and then she was punishing the rest of us, and I was like, oh my god, like what? Like, oh, when I found out that that's how she wrote, and it was this like really like source of pride. Like, I sit down every day and I light a votive candle, and I was like, oh, of course your poems feel like you were being punished. You are, like, you're punishing yourself. And so I sort of had this like a slightly more like like when the muse strikes, the muse strikes. So I think that if you're not like 22 years old and you spend a certain amount of time every day, and our friend Marion calls it asinchairness, that like the quality that every artist needs is asinchairness. You can't distinguish between like the good moments and the bad moments a week or two later. That when you go back over what you've worked on, if you did it, you did it, and you kind of see yourself in the work that you did. But I don't have, I still don't have the kind of process where I kind of, for prose, for argument, for essay, I can sort of sit down and I can kind of, set the clock and do it in my little Pomodoros. But for poetry, it still is very much for me kind of when it comes. And I have a life where I have to do so many other things that poetry is still kind of the fun thing at the edge that I get to. Mm-hmm. I still have the kind of life where like, I don't have, 7 magazines or like demanding work from me or anything. So, I can, and I have to teach a lot. I teach a lot. And so poetry is still kind of like the fun thing that I get to do when everything else is done. And I still don't really have like the kind of disciplined practice where I'm like, today I would work on the poem for now. I have much more respect for people who have those now than when I was younger, but that it's still kind of not exactly the way that I work.
Yeah, I have to say the same to some extent. Prose, I feel like I can give myself a certain amount of time. I am more like rigorous with that during the day, and then poetry becomes the kind of magical thing that happens. But we have a poetry group here, Kristen. Like we have like Meg is here, she's in the group, and I don't know if there's anybody else, but and some of the times we do this thing where we do poem a day, where we'll challenge ourselves, and this really works for me. Where we did it like right as we were kind of moving into the social distancing, where we did like we kind of promised each other that we'd write, and it doesn't matter who does it, who doesn't do it, like no one's shamed, but to write a poem every day. And what I like about that, and for like we did it once for like 30 days, and it was just like, some of the stuff I was writing was so horrible. It was like embarrassing. And then major notes, I would get angry and I would yell and scream like, I suck and this sucks. And so I found 2 weeks was a kind of a good medium because I knew there was a light at the end of the tunnel. I could just push myself those 2 weeks. And I did like some of the stuff I came up with. And what I really liked about it is just sitting down, like you were just saying, ask time. I knew I committed to doing a poem that night. And I let go of kind of the anxiety that happened to be the perfect best poem ever. It just made me a lot like move into writing whatever. And sometimes that opened up space for me that allowed for things that I would have been editing out if I were doing it during the day, or, you know, in this kind of more free form way. But the poem that I read, the early spring poem about the bird getting, I mean, that was unfortunately, Major and I got out, we went for a hike and we looked at the front of the car and there was like this gorgeous bird embedded in the grill of our car. It was horrible. But that poem, it'd been a while. So I kind of was writing for, you know, during our early social distancing, but then, you know, things kind of happened. We had our youngest with us and other life things. So I don't have like that. I wish I had that daily practice where I actually was more disciplined, but like Jason, I teach also, I have to do other things, grade. And
I'll also say, because Jennifer Knox is here, Jennifer L. Knox. For many years, she and I and our friend Ada Limon had two things that we did together. And one was we gave each other challenges that we wrote to. And the second was that we did poetry. We did, poetry, NaPoWriMo together. And so one, I think we all wrote amazing challenge poems, but their NaPoWriMo poems all ended up in like the New Yorker and poetry. And my NaPoWriMo poems just ended up in the trash. And so like after a while, I was like, I'm not doing this anymore. You're really good at it, and I'm really bad. But yeah, I do. It's not that I've never tried the discipline of, you know, like make yourself do it every single day. And in fact, when I first moved to New York, David Lehman, who's one of the founders of this series, was, you know, publishing a book every couple of years that came out of his Poem a Day project, and I would get really mad. I mean, David's not here, so I don't know, you can tell David I said this. But I get really mad because he would, you know, have all these introductions about like, you know, well, inspiration is a myth and you just need to sit down. And I was like, I don't think that's true. That's true for you.
Yeah.
You stop saying that's true for everyone.
And he's coming out of a journalism background where if a journalist, I feel like they got to get that stuff done and they had that deadline in the night, and maybe that was part of it. But and it's true. Like I also, I just want to say, Kristen, that my friend Michelle is here, and I see her name still there. She and we all through grad school, and after, I mean, my gosh, we met pregnant in grad school, looked at each other and said, "What the hell are you doing?" kind of thing, and that's how we became such close friends. And we met every Monday, until I moved to Vermont. So I don't even know how. I mean, our kids are 22. Dylan just turned 22 now, so 22. So, and we would just sit down on Mondays, and that was all that we could do, but it was what we could do, you know.
Other questions?
Thank you.
Sorry, okay, yeah.
Other questions? Lynn Deming, any relationship to John Deming?
Who's he? I've heard of him, yeah.
I do have a question for you guys. I'm so sorry. I was eating an entire pizza this whole time.
I'm so jealous.
Very jealous.
What was on the pizza?
I got a margarita pizza with sausage on it. Sometimes I flat out just stopped chewing. You guys were just phenomenal.
Don't aspirate.
So I do have a question. I'm trying to kind of word it as I go, but writing right now during all that's happening, how much do you feel a public obligation versus personal obligation, especially when commenting about things that are happening right now in our society and in our own personal lives? And I guess that's my question.
None.
The role of the poet during global health crisis.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I remember after 9/11 getting lots of emails about, you know, like, this is the moment of poets and we need to talk, and, you know, and going to lots of poetry things and Poetry Against the War. And, you know, if you remember that time, Laura Bush, you know, shutting down the summit because at her summit on Langston Hughes and Walt Whitman, she didn't want any political poetry. It was like, what? on Langston Hughes and Walt Whitman. You don't want political poetry. And it was insane. I mean, Marilyn Nelson was going to give her like a peace sign scarf was like the protest. But there was so much bad poetry. I mean, there was just this geyser, this fire hose, this fire hydrant of terrible work that just kind of spewed out over America. And for that reason, I think it's okay to take your time. I mean, I think that until you're ready to get the right things said, I mean, I'm not the Poet Laureate of America. I mean, you know, if you're on notice, if you're on deadline, and you know you need an inaugural poem by January 20th, then you got to deliver. But I'm not. And so I feel like it's okay for everyone to take the reflective space that they need. And this is going to come out. There's a great book of queer theory called If Memory Serves by the two Christophers who write together. It's Christopher Castiglia and Christopher Reed. And the book is basically about how the AIDS crisis of the 80s and the 90s has not persisted in the public memory in the way that you think that it might. That in the 80s and the 90s, everything was about AIDS, right? That there was this constant awareness. And yet, if you go back and you listen to like all of your songs from the 80s and the 90s, if you put on your Yaz album or your Bronski Beat album or whatever it is, it's very easy to miss the way in which that had shaped things. And I think that 10 years from now, it'll be, someone's doctoral dissertation will be about how what we're going through now kind of shaped the work that was formed. But I mean, I think that the kind of work that's, like, as I sit here in pandemic, or, as I cannot leave my house, is not the work that's going to hold up. That what's going to inflect the work that we're doing now is going to be a kind of mood. It's going to be a kind of sensibility, and that it's okay to take your time. I mean, because if you look at the hot takes, right, and the other thing is, like, we have the internet, so the fastest way to get online, I mean, prior to coronavirus, the fastest way to get yourself published was to declare that Pete Buttigieg wasn't actually a homosexual and that his somehow having sex with men was incidental to his identity, and he was really a straight man in a, like, and I was like, what? And so, I mean, we've kind of gotten dumber and dumber. Like, I mean, the internet's sort of, hot takeification of culture, where whoever will say the most extreme version of anything is who gets to be in the public sphere the fastest, like, is actually terrifying to me. And so I think as artists, if we're like, actually, I'll get back to you in 5 years, like, yeah, like that's okay for us. Like we should totally have that freedom. But if you're writing about the pandemic now and it's fantastic, then, like, that's great. I'm a little jealous.
Jason, are you advocating for work that's, as a result, is more interior? Or Dee, are you saying that the hot takes lack the kind of depth of interrogation as one would want from a poem?
Yeah, and I mean, the hot takes are a kind of very particular thing, and I think they're very much a result of social media, and it's why all headlines are now, 2 titles, right, or 2 sentences. The coronavirus is doing 10 things to you. Number 6 will give you nightmares. People think that, and like, I mean, there's a piece in the Times about, mentioning like 6 or 7 hot takes about how the boomers aren't taking it seriously enough, and now the millennials are having to, like, beg their boomer parents not to go outside. And it's just not true. That if you look at polling, the older people are, the more seriously they're taking it. And, but the faster way to get published is, I'm a millennial, why won't my parents listen to me and not go outside during coronavirus? And so, I mean, I think the hot takes make us dumb, because instead of looking for the most reasonable version of an argument, we look for the most extreme version of an argument. And what social media in particular does, and I think this is actually the secret topic of my book, is it circulates outrage. That it's just an outrage machine, and we just pass it back and forth. And so, you know, those people who are showing up with their signs that say Arbeit macht frei to like open Michigan, yeah, that is the most extreme, crazy, whacked out version of the argument for why you should open government. But that's what will get the attention, and it also will make me the angriest. So I'm the likeliest to click on it rather than, you know, like a considered reasonable. And I don't want to romanticize the past. I don't want to pretend like, oh, in the 1960s we had these reasonable, rational conversations where, you know, James Baldwin went on the Dick Cavett show and everyone made lots of sense. Like, I mean, I don't want to be nostalgic, but I also want to recognize that we're kind of living with something that I think is really toxic. For our lives and our intelligence and our thought processes.
True. Yeah, and I was just gonna say to Lily's question also, the poems that I'm writing right now during the pandemic, I don't feel that they are pandemic poems necessarily. And I think one of the things I'm doing, and I think Jason mentioned this earlier, is that I'm trusting that the effects of the pandemic, whatever fear I have, daily fear, daily gratefulness, daily whatever the things are that the million of emotions that I run through every day, I trust that they'll find their way into the poem. And so I don't set out to necessarily write a pandemic poem, although I guess Ides of March kind of was that a little bit, but that was early on in those, you know, back in mid-March, you know, we're in a very different month now, but I trust that those things will find their way in there. And so I'm not setting out to write the pandemic poem, and I don't really for all the reasons I think Jason was saying, I don't feel like I'm still on the
really I'll be there soon.
Yeah. This is a question for John and Matthew and Jason. You know, KGB's series is part of a long tradition of literary jinks and gatherings that maybe even takes it back to some of the coffee shops in the 19th century in Europe. And I'm curious if you are thinking about this series, what you've inherited as curators, and how this series will move forward. Will it go back to normal, or can you see more programming that looks like this Brady Bunch circa 19th?
I mean, so we should definitely unplug Matt Yeager on this one, but while we're waiting for that to be figured out, I'll answer you. I've been doing this for like 8 years now, and I gotta say, some of my best memories ever. I think about, for some reason, like different images of like Matthew Zapruder up against the window at Jason, why can't I think of what's the bar across the street?
Oh, it's Stillwater.
Yeah, which closed now, but we used to go there every night. Whoever read, and everybody would go over there for years, you know. And then like, I remember one night Mark Strand was reading and had like, I brought a copy of my book, The Continuous Life, and I always loved his poem Fiction, and he had like forgotten he ever even wrote it, but I had loved it since I was like, before I like kind of really seriously got into this shit. And he looked at it, he goes, this is a good poem. And then he's like, and then he read it out of my copy, that sort of thing. And then a couple of years later, he died of cancer. But it was like, we get these little like, yeah, it's pretty, I think we feel it pretty good. But let me pass it off to Matt.
Well, I think that we should try to supplement the series with what, you know, these dire times have caused Jason to kind of get together, because this is excellent. I was you know, when Major was talking, I had this memory of being behind the little red lectern and looking out and seeing Major's face and seeing, you know, the faces of other poets, because they would come there and make it feel like a New York chuckle hut, you know, where, you know, Larry David is listening to Jerry Seinfeld, you know, and, you know, but I would look out and sometimes have this thought like, wow, if a bomb went off in this, you know, like it would take out more poets than like World War I did for England. I mean, it would just like partially eliminate American poetry. Mm-hmm. And then you'd feel so privileged to kind of be there. And, you know, and the way that particular space, you know, 30 people and it's full, and 40 and it's tight, and 50 and it's 6 train, and 60 it's combustible. And back when there used to be a cloud of cigarette smoke that used to hang in the ceiling, I mean, it's easy enough to imagine, but I mean, the memories that, I mean, just David Lehman's, weekly altercations with people who would try to get in his seat, I don't know. It's got to go back, but, hopefully people, maybe through a Zoom series would make the actual place more of a destination. Maybe when people go in, they can get a thermometer to the temple and go in there and get together like it's, 1926.
Well, Jason and I are trying real hard with he has the glow of the bulb on his face and I have the red to simulate the wallpaper. So maybe that'll make this a really magnetic online series. Otherwise it's just everybody coming every time.
I mean, after the when it became clear that we were going to stop, when it became clear that like our classes were not going to be meeting in person anymore, and when it became clear that the restaurants were going to close, and when it was clear that like we were going to go into some kind of virtual thing, the image that stuck in my head was in Munich, in the center of Munich, there is a clock which rings, like 5 times a day. And it's like this big, tourist attraction. And it celebrates all the things you would expect, a royal wedding that caused the peace between Bavaria and whatever the other places. But one of them is the barrel makers doing a dance to celebrate the end of plague. That at the end, in like, it's like 1520 or 1516. And people were afraid to go outside. Because they weren't sure the plague had passed, and the barrel makers went out and they did their dance in the street and played their songs and did their clogging. And that is such an important moment that 500 years later, every single day in the city of Munich, you can celebrate the end of the plague and the return to human contact and the return to commerce. And if you go in Europe, that practice of like, you don't take the money directly, you put the money in a dish and they take the money out of the dish. That's from plague. So, I mean, we have this historical record of times when humans...
And let's not forget that KGB used to be a speakeasy in the 20s.
Yes, we have this record of times when humans have not been able to congregate, and what we celebrate is when they can congregate again. So I really, however long this takes, whether it's, months or years or decades, the desire to touch each other, the desire to be in the same room, the desire to be near each other is not going to go away. And it's going to come back, and it's never going to, the phone is a wonderful invention, but it will never replace actually touching someone.
I'd like to say something if I could, and that is that I'm very grateful for this, because as John knows, I've been wanting to come to KGB for a long time just to enjoy that with you, but I live many miles away. And I'm just really excited about being able to watch you guys and see all of this. So I hope this continues in some fashion into the future.
Jason and I have discussed the idea of like the kind of, once we're back in the bar, trying
streaming
to find some way to live stream or IG live or that kind of thing. Yeah.
And it's an accessibility issue. I mean, there are people who cannot travel. There are people who can't. I mean, Jesus Christ, I'm getting too old to go up those stairs. The stairs are terrifying. And when you're like drunk, when I'm like
KGB is still the
tonics.
The only bar that I know of where they solved the problem of like, so you're coming down a flight of stairs and the ceiling is too low. And so people hit their heads. So that's like the solution to the problem is to have the foam. You know what I mean? Like, that's what
because if you're drunk enough that you hit your head on the foam, you don't even notice.
The foam works. The foam has worked for me. I don't know.
But Kathy, my friend from high school has a picture of me from high school that I think she wanted to show. Do you want to get that out?
Sounds like a screen share.
I don't know if you can see it.
Oh my God, that's so cute. Oh my God, is that Bartenstein?
Yep.
Oh, that's so sweet.
Title, hold on, wait.
That's our speech and debate. We brought back a lot of trophies.
So that's your secret.
Yeah. I kept my teeth on oral and tape oral interpretation of poetry. And then we did, what was our scene?
We did Sherlock Holmes and Watson.
Well,
We were champions! Champions, I tell you!
This is some blackmail material, y'all. Can we just keep this a secret,
That's
please?
right.
Okay.
I don't have the trophies anymore. I don't know what happened to them.
Mine are in my parents' attic.
Oh, they're probably at my parents'
Where they
took them back to
belong.
Texas.
Trophies
Yeah,
are
where they
Belong,
belong.
exactly.
Yeah.
well, I'm going to, if there's no more questions, I'm just going to, once again express immense gratitude for Dee Dee and Jason. Can we give them applause again? And I'm not sure the next incarnation of KGB, but whatever it is, I will be there. Meanwhile,
Oh, yeah.
tune in to, we're going to do a marathon reading of Moby Dick on the channel.
Are you
On
really?
what channel?
Can I read a squeeze of the hand? Can I have that? Are all the chapters taken yet? Can I have the really dirty one?
That would be Lolita. You can marathon read.
No, Moby Dick is so much filthier than Lolita. Lolita, it's all on the surface. Moby Dick, you got to know where to look. Moby Dick has some stank on it. That is a dirty, dirty book.
So next week's reading, John.
Yeah, so we're looking at, Jason, can you help me with
Yeah, it's
this?
Tina
Kiki
Chang
Petrosino.
and Kiki
Tina Chang?
Petrosino.
Yeah,
Wow.
It's a good
Wonderful.
reading. You want to be here next Monday?
Great.
Next Monday.
it's the same exact link. Yeah, come on.
Same
back.
link?
Oh, yeah. Well,
Oh, there
that link confused people
I
because they
know.
thought, yeah.
I know.
Anyway, thank
But
you,
it's the same
everyone.
link. Yeah.
It'll
Thank you.
Good
guys.
night.
Thank you for tuning in.
coming.
That's good.
Yeah.
Allison,
Thank
nice
you,
to
Major
meet you.
Jackson, Dita Jackson, Jason Schneiderman.
Thank
Hold me
you.
tight.
Jason,
Which?
Dee Dee, all of you. Yeah, I love seeing your faces. Thanks for coming, you guys.
Also, for those who are still here, I remember like a couple of years ago, Jason saying to me, like, I think I'm going to call my new book, Hold Me Tight. Do you think that's a good title? And I thought for 1 second, I was like, Hold Me Tight, Jason's Poems, Jason Schneiderman. Hell yeah, that's great. So that's for you. Yeah, great title. But, all right, good night, everybody.
I'm sending you all back to the Ethernet.
Bye.